All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to more Black Desert. So today I wanted to update one of my old guides, and I think about 6 months ago, maybe even more, I made a video called How to Improve Your Grind and Grind More Efficiently, and a lot of stuff has changed in the 6 months, so I thought it would be a good time to update this video as well as bring some new tips on things you should do. Obviously, party elixirs can be converted to harmony drafts and stuff now, so we'll be talking about that. But I wanted to talk about this from both a beginner perspective and someone who's like just trying to get better at what they do. And it doesn't really matter what class you play. I think all these tips will be helpful to you in one way or the other. So assume that you're a beginner and you are just grinding, or you came from a new MMO and you're just like, okay, so how do I do this efficiently? So in most other MMOs, the goal is to basically full buff, go into your thing, and then do work. But in this game, it's a little bit different because there's a lot of extra steps to do it, which is kind of annoying a little bit. But I'm just going to try to talk to you about this all in an efficient way to do it. So, first of all, food buff. This is probably the most important thing. You can get a simple cron meal, or you can get an exquisite cron meal. For most people, I would say simple cron meal is, better. There's no right or wrong answer whether you use exquisite or simple. I think most people just use simple because it gives plus 30 AP against monsters, whereas this one gives, more like different types of damage, like crit, back attack, and all that stuff. But yeah, so this one has down attack and stuff as well. So there's no right or wrong answer. I think the more used one is simple these days. And yeah, so food buff is always good, and you could get this off the central market or make them yourself. All you would have to do is type cron, and then you pick the one you want, and yeah, just pick one. The seafood one is for life skillers, so if you are grinding specifically, it's irrelevant for you, but it's something that is pretty good for life skillers. And so next, this is kind of a newer thing that they introduced more or less recently, and we're going to be talking about the new drafts and elixirs and all the other stuff. So I personally still use party elixirs simply because I just had them and I need to use them, or it's just going to sit there. But for most people nowadays, getting a harmony draft is probably an easier thing to do. You don't have to manage all your buffs, and we'll talk about management in a little bit. But for now, I think for most people, if you are a beginner and you're not grinding a super high-end spot, the things I would recommend getting are Frenzy drafts of corruption. You could also get them. You could just type frenzy and then buy these or make it yourself. And yeah, it's like, I think you can actually make it. Yeah, if you put an order on it, you'll get it the same day. It looks like there's a lot of orders, but people are buying them in stacks of 100. So it's really not as many as it may seem. So yeah, if you are a beginner or you're not grinding in the spot where you're AP capped and everything, this is just generally a good one. And then you can turn the 15-minute ones into 1 hour ones, which most people in BDO, as a collective, we track our grinding by 1 hour sessions. And that means when you ever see people like, oh, I made X amount of silver in this hour. Yes, because most buffs and everything are by the hour. So I guess 1 hour is the general standard for grinding. So yeah, aside from that, if you are moving up into grinding these days and you're taking it more seriously, you could either use party elixirs, which are the blue ones, or you could use harmony drafts, and each one of these is a species. So if you're like a PvPer, use human. If you're fighting demi-humans or Comosylvian type enemies, you would use class specific damage. And if you're grinding in a spot that doesn't have like a species specific type, you could just use the harmony like non-species. They're all the same thing. The difference is like the species one gives extra species damage, whereas this one it doesn't. So they also kind of have the damage from monsters minus 10%. Yes, it's nice. Does it really matter? No, not really. If these are all the same price and you're grinding in a random spot that doesn't have it, just get this one that has a random species, because you'll just get the extra line of 10% minus damage from monsters. So whichever one. So basically you turn harmonies into a species, but it depends on the price these days. And then yeah, so if you're going a little further, this is more for the end game players and people who are grinding the higher end spots. You would use an extra perfume of some sort. So this is something I would recommend to people who grind on a budget, the Bracing Spirit Perfume Elixir. The reason why is this is like only 5 mil additionally, and it gives you extra AP against monsters, HP, and crit, and all that stuff. But this is like the budget one. And then if you're going like super try hard, I would use the Perfume of Courage. These are 30 mil each, and you're going to be popping at least 3 of them an hour. So just factor that into your grind. So I guess for like people who just want to grind, maybe you're not AP capped or something, or you're grinding in the spot where you're over capped, this is probably good enough. So yeah, for most people, I would just recommend Harmony drafts these days. For old school players who probably have literally thousands of elixirs and party ones and you're too lazy to convert it into Harmony, just use these up and then you go to Harmony. So yeah, those are the elixir buffs that I use. The next few things I want to talk about are also something important, because I've talked about this in the past where some of my other friends that I play other MMOs with are used to like grinding differently in other MMOs, and they're not used to stacking buffs in a sense of like there are different ones. So one thing I wanted to talk about was the Villa buff that we all know. There's a lot of different ways to get it. I've talked about that. You can either get the permanent tent, or you can get the Villa scroll down in a villa. They look like these icons right here, like the little villas, right? And you just pay the NPC and it gives you a 1 week scroll, and then you transfer it back and forth. But what it looks like is these buffs. The general usage is the orange one, the body enhancement, simply because it just gives you more damage and, you know, the stats you need for grinding for the most part. And you buy it based on time you're planning on grinding. So yeah, that's always cool. So always have that. There's also other campsite buffs, which is like loot buffs, church buffs, and everything, which this one is actually kind of newer. I wouldn't say new, but it's a newer addition to the tent. And these tent buffs give you like extra AP, accuracy, HP, and all that stuff. I want to make sure you guys know it is a little bit more expensive. So for example, 120 minutes is 3.5 million silver. But if you were to buy it from the church directly, I believe it's 3 million. So you're saving a little bit. If you already are at your grind spot and you're spending an extra like 2 million silver, it's not even a big deal. So yeah, these are the exact same buffs. They cost more at the tent just for a convenience sake. It's not a big deal whether you get it there or not. But yeah, so those are your general standards for grinding. I just want to make sure you guys know you cannot stack perfumes. Just make sure to read the like tooltip, the purple text and all that stuff. You can stack elixirs, like all of these. You can only have one harmony. So like you can't stack a Kama Sylvia and a demi-human, but you can have one of these plus a perfume, if that makes sense. And you could use all party elixirs at once. And basically, you just read the tooltip. It tells you what you can and can't use. You could stack food, elixirs, one perfume, and other stuff. So another thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is this one is a little bit different. This one is kind of like Heidel specific, but if you are here and this is your central hub, this NPC right here, you pay a little bit of energy for this buff. And what it does is give you critical hit damage 10% for 30 minutes. Yeah, and I know we grind by the hour, but it's only half, and not like we can change that. So you get 30 minutes or you don't get it, and 30 minutes is better. The next thing I wanted to talk about was furniture. Now, this is something I admittedly sometimes forget myself, and I wanted to show you how it works. So, you know, if you've been playing this game for a long time, we recently had the Thanksgiving event, and they basically, you see all these furnitures that they kind of just give away. You basically place them in your house, and then you click it, and you see the buff right here. You can just get it. And everything else, like all these like Nuver, Kudum buffs, and, you know, like various things from events, you could get those buffs too, and they stack with all your existing buffs as well. So, yeah, like the recent one we got was, well, this is one of them. But with the Thanksgiving event, where did I put it, actually? Uh-oh. Where did I put it? Oh, yeah, so here, this is kind of where I just leave all the random stuff in the turkey ones, where you get extra AP against monsters, X life, or no, combat XP, drop rate. Those are always nice to have. And if you don't already do it, you could actually go down into furniture and like get the decoration stuff. So you can see all these. Usually the more expensive ones are the ones that give extra damage bonus. So is it worth it? It's worth it for the higher end grinders who are grinding super end game spots. Is it good for lower end like beginners? No, it's not. And also they are very rarely sold, so keep that in mind as well. You can just hover over the tooltip and look at what kind of buffs you want. I think the general good stats are damage against monsters, anything with plus 15 AP. So like these thingies, there's like plus 15 AP for 2 hours, and all that stuff for 3 hours. So yeah, just go for AP. It just means more damage. And then those are all the buffs that we use, well, for the most part. Well, there's one more, actually. Let me just show you this real quick. So right now, there's an event going on where you could just buy Krogdalo gear. Well, it's not really an event, but like you could make these all year round. It's called Krogdalo gear, and they're just selling them from the NPC. It's a little bit more expensive, but you could do it. It's an option. So Krogdalo gear, basically there's 3 types: an earth, a wind, and a sea. And the one that most people want are the wind set, simply because this one gives plus 5 AP to 10 allies for an hour, so you can use it for yourself. Same with earth is damage reduction and evasion, and the sea is HP. So generally I would say most people would want AP, and myself included. I have all of them. So we have a full wind set, and this is how you use it. You get on your horse with the set, and then you do that, and then you see how I got the buff, the winds roar plus 5. So if I were to be full buffed, the way you could track it is like all your damage over here, extra AP against monsters, plus your extra damage over here. And then when you're full buffed, you would obviously, the number would be higher. So that's always good to know. And then a few more things that actually there are some people forgetting to do. And sometimes, especially because there are so many classes in this game, you probably forget to like update your add-ons and everything. So make sure to actually just update your add-ons and make sure all of these are up to date. And the longer you play a class, the more you know like what skills you use more often. It doesn't matter what class. For the most part, just, you know, eventually just max out everything and then learn your class a little bit more. And then make sure to change your skill add-ons and enhancements. If you hear other content creators call these skills Rabam, that's what they used to be called years ago. So that's how you know that they're like an OG player or something. They used to be called Rabams, and then now they're just called skill enhancements or whatever. Either way, they're the same thing if that's a term you've ever heard. And yeah, make sure to tweak these to what you do. So if you're a PvEer, the important skills are always extra AP against monsters, minus DP, faster attack speed, and then like various CCs or extra special damage, I guess they call it. So yeah, always try to keep these up. And the biggest tip I can give all of you guys, without even knowing what class you play, is make sure to add add-ons where you could pop these on cooldowns. So for example, Cluster of Despair. This is... oh, actually, hold on. Let me find something. Shattering Darkness. Extra AP against monsters plus 30 for 12 seconds. Attack and cast speed for 12 seconds. This is how I set it. And the reason why these are 12-second buffs, this is a 9-second cooldown skill. That means, in theory, if you're doing things right, you should be able to keep this up 100%. Obviously, it doesn't work that way, but as close to 100 as you can. And then, you know, you don't really want skills with, like, kind of sketch things where the timers throw everything off. It's just part of, like, improving overall. But, like, for example, this one. Dark Nebula. 7-second cooldown. Trying to hit everything at least 7 seconds for a 100% uptime. Obviously, it works differently. But this is how, like, if you're good at your class and everything, you just kind of tweak things to a point where you could hit all these on cooldown, and uptime is, for the most part, always going. So yeah, just look at those for the most part, and then tweak your skills like that. The next thing I want to talk about is artifacts and lightstones. Now, I understand this is kind of a difficult thing, just because everyone's at a different point in the game. But one thing that I think is important is getting artifacts. So, eventually, your endgame goal is to get the Kabua's artifact if you are a PvEer. It gives extra AP against monsters, monster damage reduction, and HP survivability and everything. What you would do with it is add 4 Lightstones to make combos. So, for the most part, there are about 3 combos or combinations of things at endgame. 2 species ones. So, one is species damage better. If you are grinding a spot where you have more effective AP, and when people say effective, it means like your AP or awakening plus the extra AP from all your buffs and everything, and then buffs from like species and everything. So if that number, I guess I could actually just show you an example. Yeah, let's use this one, Ackman. These are my stats so far. Recommended, what you do is view total stats, and this is, for the most part, what the AP cap is. If your number right here is higher than, like, this number, you are more than, like, capped for this spot. So what you would do, for example, Ackman is a demi-human spot. So you would use demi-human damage, because species damage goes farther than AP. By a lot, not really, but it does go past the cap. That's just something you learn by playing the game and testing. But for everyone else, one thing that's very good for endgame is called all-out attack. This one just gives fat damage and crit damage, more AP, and yeah, it's just overall plus 20 AP, crit damage. You do lose DR and evasion, but like, if you're at the higher end of the scale in grinding, like, you shouldn't be dying to anything. I can assure you that. I've grinded every spot in this game with all-out attack, and I'm also doing fine, but I'm also geared as well. Yeah, so, and then Lightstones. I have an entire video. It's about 30 to 40 minutes where we talk about every single Lightstone combination I have. It's also in my Discord as well. So if you want to watch that one, it's a very detailed video on what I use. But yeah, we're just going to keep this one short simply because I don't want to talk about this for 30 minutes. Just go watch the video if you care. And we talk about efficiently building different sort of crystals and artifacts based on what you do. Some grind spots have CCs, like Ash Forest, for example. You kind of want more knockdown resistance, whereas, you know, some other spots you don't even get CC'd at all, so just go max damage. So yeah, make sure to optimize your artifacts, lightstones, your crystals. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was having a fairy. Now, I believe this is actually A little bit less relevant nowadays since harmony drafts are more of a thing. And back in the day, so like we would use all of these elixirs, right? And obviously you are not clicking these one by one, and so there were about like 15 elixirs that you had to pop by fairy. And then nowadays, basically all these elixirs go into one harmony draft. So for all of you out there who are old school players and you probably have a continuous care 4 or 5 fairy, cool. It's less relevant now than it was, 2 years ago. So, things I want to talk about with the fairy. One, I do honestly believe this is the most pay to win thing in the game, because like you getting maxed out fairies is really just straight up RNG, and you just send the Aya's orbs or whatever they're called until you get what you want. So, having a fairy, I will tell you what is optimal. When you get a fairy at tier 4 or whatever, tier 5, whatever its max is these days, Miraculous tier 5 is the most important one you want. The reason why is it goes down 1 cooldown second for using a potion automatically. Every second per tier down to 2 seconds. And if you look at this, your infinite potions, 2-second cooldown. So it's extremely important that you have Miraculous tier 5. That's one button you will never have to press again. Your infinite potions, and it auto pots on them. So how does it work? By default, these will be empty, right? What you do is you set your potions, whether you have infinite potions or not, 1 HP, 1 MP, and then you set it by the rate that you want it to heal whenever. So yeah, set it to however you want and you're good. The next thing I would recommend is probably Feathery Steps, because for grinding, as we all know, trash loot eventually adds up in your inventory. So the more you can carry, the better. And this just scales well the more weight you have. And so I wanted to talk about continuous care for a little bit, simply because I wanted to make sure people don't like just light thousands of dollars on fire. I guarantee you most people are not spending that much money, but you're spending probably at least 100 on average, which is a lot, actually. So let me talk about this. Continuous care. Let's look at this one. Continuous care 1 goes from 5 items, 2 is 8 items, 3 is 12 and 16. How does it work? So when you get to continuous care, you get 3 presets, right? And basically you set your things. You can use 1 food, drafts and elixirs, which you can set, and then you can set 1 perfume and like XP scrolls and whatnot, right? So this is what we used to use back in the day when we were stacking elixirs. Nowadays, here's what we normally do. I actually don't even think you need this, because you know what you could do? If you're actually just grinding manually, this takes up 15 spots, I believe, but it's okay if you don't have it. I would actually recommend you not getting a maxed out continuous care fairy if you are. So before we talk about this, I wanted to say with the fairy, after looking at all of this, I think your average person will not use more than 8. I think even if you had a continuous care fairy 1 or 2, that is beyond enough for most people. So yeah, just what you do is basically just track how many you actually need before deciding you want to spend all of your money on getting it. If you just want to have a maxed out fairy and everything is level 5, more power to you, very cool. But for everyone who wants to play efficiently, I guarantee you will not need it. So here's what you do. You get your harmony draft. You drag this into your hotbar, and then you press the button once every 15 minutes. Suddenly, you don't need 15 of those spots. And then if you have your perfume thingy, you just put it on another hotkey. A tip I could give all of you guys if you're grinding is, like, for example, set it up the way I do. Obviously, you would set yours up a little bit differently. I have a fairy, so I don't need to do it as often. But if you didn't have a fairy, here's what I would do. Put a harmony draft on like F11, put a perfume on F12. every 15-20 minutes. Just hit 11 and 12, easy, and then a fairy, irrelevant. You don't even need it. So yeah, that's about it. There's a lot of things that we could talk about. Obviously, when it comes to improving your grind, it's knowing how to play your character a lot better. Some classes are just straight up better than the others. That it is what it is. But those are all tips that I can give you on improving your grind and, you know, just basic things for beginners all the way to endgame. So if this helped you, drop a like on the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And over the month, I'll be updating a lot of my older guides just to, you know, this game changes so often. And I want to make sure everything is kind of like up to date and all that stuff. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. I would love to see you come back. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.